We're talking about 5 clever customer service survival tips. We want to thank all our guests for being a part of the show. We've had John Carroll, the CEO of the Service Council. We've had Bill Ziska, who is director at Deloitte Digital, and we've had Brad Blake from Hill Holiday. And now we're bringing in Cris Franco from Yaskawa. Cris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a tough group to follow.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about you and your role at Yaskawa as the manager of customer support, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And what does Yaskawa do?
Yaskawa is basically a company with mother company in Japan, in Fukuoka, Japan. We're really excited. We were established in 1915, so we're excited about a 100-year anniversary coming up next year.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. I work for one of the subsidiaries out of Illinois, and the subsidiary is a $500 million organization. We're a factory automation equipment manufacturer. We basically serve any industry, be it commercial, industrial, where factory automation processes are involved.
So when you talk about these 5 clever customer service survival tips, you talk about them both on a B2B and a B2C level?
Primarily B2B.
Okay.
Primarily B2B.
So we're going to look at most of these tips through a Yaskawa perspective, right, Kai?
Yes, which is excellent because until now we have always sort of tended to talk about customer service from the angle of a B2C perspective,
right.
Which is not surprising because we think about customer service as consumers day in and day out. We have customer service interactions day in and day out, and this is why we tend to think about customer service as our own personal experience. That's why I'm so excited to have you on the show, Cris, to basically complement that perspective with a B2B perspective through the lens of Yaskawa.
Yeah. What's interesting about Yaskawa too is the fact that yes, we are primarily a B2B, but the service that we provide are actually to the end users, to the end customers, who are the consumers. So that's how it kind of all ties in together for us.
Okay. So why don't we jump right in and talk about the clever customer service survival tip number 1, which is to be consistent across channels. We've heard about that topic a little bit in the show already. Talk to us about Yaskawa's perspective, why it's so important to deliver a consistent service experience across interaction channels.
There are a couple aspects to this whole tip. I think there's one, the expectation, and one, the experience. What I mean by that is that, for example, I think primarily in a B2B, both of them deal with different demographics, right? So the way you handle in a B2B environment might be different than in a B2C environment. So for us, what I'm seeing lately is a shift in the way the expectation is in a B2B environment. Typically, the B2B environment has a larger demographic, wider demographic, I should say, and they primarily like to deal with standard communication channels. They like to call a company, speak to somebody in person. You know, they don't mind waiting in a queue to reach somebody else to get support, right? Whereas someone who is a consumer doesn't want to wait. He wants to get online and find his answer right away. He wants to send an email and he wants to hear right away. He wants to get a reply right away. He wants to get on live chat because he doesn't want to sit on a phone queue and wait for somebody. So he wants an answer right away. The B2B person might not mind waiting in a queue. He might say, okay, you know what, this is not so important. I'm going to send an email, and if they get back to me at the end of the day, maybe it's okay then, you know, because it's not important. If it's urgent, they're going to call. But that's where I'm seeing a shift right now. What I'm seeing is that a lot of the younger generation is entering into the B2B environment. They're coming into these environments with the same expectations they had as a consumer. Right. They're saying, hey, I sent an email, I want an answer now. Yeah. But now they're in this B2B environment that's not used to this way of operating, right? Mm-hmm. So as an organization, Yaskawa recognizes this, and we have taken steps internally in the company to be prepared for those type of environments and types of support structures.
That's a perfect perspective. So basically, the blending of the private personal lives and the professional lives of your customers is definitely prevalent and is here to stay. And that obviously puts customer service organizations onto a whole different level since expectations are on the rise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So when it comes to cross-channel consistency, why don't you explain our audience which channels Yaskawa uses today, and
great question,
and how they interact and are integrated with each other.
Okay, we primarily use 3 channels. We use telephone, we use email, and we use video. Our products are high-tech products. So a lot of the work we provide, the service we provide, is support on the technical level. So it's very difficult to explain to a customer, you know, check this wire in a certain area, a certain color. So being in a high-tech environment is a lot easier with video. You say, show me what you have instead of explain it to me. It speeds up the process. Customers like it a lot better. They feel that they accomplish their work faster, because most of the times the B2B people are calling us, they're on a clock. They have expectations and deadlines themselves. So the video channel has helped us in a high-tech environment be more, being able to provide service better and faster for us. We have telephone, we as well, we have queues for customer service, for aftermarket part sales, for technical support, for field service, and we're all on the same system, and we all strive to provide the same type of customer service experience. One of Yaskawa's models is it's personal. What that means to us is that every employee is going to assure the highest level of customer experience possible in every interaction with a customer, you know, regardless of what channel it is. Right? So for us, when I was looking at these topics we were going to discuss today, a lot of these tie together. You know, you can't provide a consistent experience if not everybody has the same information available to them. You know, if you don't have an answer to a question, but Butch does, he's going to answer in a different way than you do. Yeah. So that's why it's important to make the effort for everyone easier, so that it's not only easier for everyone, but then it becomes consistent.
Well, and to further your point, the end users might live on a different channel than your manufacturers live on, or your distributors live on, right?
That's exactly right.
So what you do, so let's get to the second point, reduce the effort for everyone. How do you, no matter what channel they're living on, how do you focus on, in a B2B environment, making it an effective and a pleasant experience?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think Yaskawa is a good example of that, because we went from being a very small organization to now becoming a medium-sized company. So what happens when you progress that way? What ends up happening is your company grows, your divisions expand, and what ends up happening, different parts of your organization end up operating somewhat of like a single business unit, and they're storing, creating content, and they're operating in their own, using their own processes and procedures, right? But now here you bring a support organization into the mix who has to support all of those areas of the company, right? How is it going to be easy for them to support all these different areas of the company if they're all doing things in a different way? Right? So as an organization, you have to recognize that that's happening and be able to come up with a way to centralize all these different repositories where customers are getting their information, or employees are getting this information to serve the customer. Make it easy for the employee to find the answers and the procedures and policies and such to handle any situation without having to struggle and somewhat then, you know, hesitate with the customer, which then in turn gives a negative experience to the customer.
So that in fact is an outstanding example for how a company reduces the effort for the agents internally, right? And in turn, by doing that, also reduces the effort for the customers to reach out to customer service and support and to have their issues resolved. You mentioned collaboration within the organization as being a central component to that. That's obviously music to our ears. And I think this is definitely the way to go, because otherwise it really depends on the personal knowledge of the agent that happens to pick up the phone, whether or not the service experience is a pleasant one or not. That's obviously not state-of-the-art customer service.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So when we talk about reducing the effort for everyone a little further, why do you think it's so critically important for your customers to be able to resolve issues in an effortless way?
Well, it really comes down to, especially in our environment, like I mentioned earlier, being a B2B, they are on the clock and they have high stress and they're expected to resolve their matters. So they're looking to us to help them, and as a partner, basically that's what we are. We have to make it easy for them and basically allow them to provide a good customer experience to their customer. So then it appears like a true partnership, like we're helping them instead of making their business more difficult.
Well, again, I think that's a great point. I think, Kai, you just actually led into tip number 5, teach them how to fish. When it comes to a B2B environment, you're actually educating, informing, and teaching your B2B relationship to fish to help satisfy the end user,
That's exactly right?
Talk a little bit more about that.
You know, this is a topic that at Yaskawa we're really excited about, something we've been working on over the last several years ourselves internally, and preparing ourselves to launch this publicly in the first half of 2015. And what that means to us is what we found, especially with us being in a high-tech environment, high-tech industry, we're serving very complex products. We're selling complex products that are being served by our distribution channel and such. So we found it's very difficult for customers to service our products because they're very complex and they're very flexible and they're able to be implemented in any environment. So what ends up happening is they end up with this encyclopedia of a 600-page manual on how to use a product. And I don't want to read through a 600-page dictionary, right?
No.
Nobody does, right? So this is where this comes into play. They teach them how to fish, be able to provide information in the way we're used to today. I'm more likely to read something that's short and sweet and less than a paragraph than I am to read 5-6 pages.
Or watch a video.
Exactly right, exactly right. And even in the case of a video, I'm more likely to watch a 4-minute video rather than a half-hour video.
Believe me, you're
right?
preaching to the choir on that one.
So that's what I
Cris.
mean by teach them how to fish is, hey, you know what, that's a great question you have. And did you know that we have those answers here? And it's easier to find here in this manner and educate them as they're asking these questions. Not just to push them away and say, hey, go over there and that's where you find your answer, but actually walk them through it and say, hey, this is where you could find those answers in the future. You'll actually be able to deflect a lot of those low-value calls and then free up your resources to basically dedicate themselves to higher value calls that could generate sales and future opportunities.
Outstanding, outstanding. Now switching gears a little bit and talking about the possibility and the ability to move away from customer service being a reactive firefighting organization towards something much more appealing, which is proactive customer service.
Yeah, that's a good topic. Again, that's something that Yaskawa is passionate about. Some of the specific things that we do, for example, Yaskawa, to be proactive instead of reactive is, for example, if you call Yaskawa into any one of our customer support areas, and just like every other organization, it's a large organization, a large volume of incoming calls, people tend to wait in a queue, waiting, listening to some kind of commercial to reach somebody, right? After a minute or two, I'm going to hang up. I'm not going to sit there waiting very long. Most people don't want to do that, right? Yaskawa takes that, and what we do is we create a callback campaign that recognizes who's been waiting in those queues to reach somebody, and automatically when the next engineer becomes available, it actually routes that number back to the engineer, and we call the customer back instead of waiting for them to call us. Nice. So a lot of times they're blown away. They're like, how did you know I was waiting for you? Nice. But that's what we do. So that's being proactive instead of reactive, right?
Excellent.
Other thing in our support areas, for example, we also have every customer who calls in who has a technical issue, they're assigned like a case number, basically. What we do is we have the tools available that recognize the state of each case. It'll tell us, hey, we've spoken to this customer 5 times, we have an hour and a half of time into this, so that when the call comes in, we're able to, those agents serving those queues, those technical engineers, are able to see, oh, maybe this needs to be escalated. Or maybe we have the system automatically escalate things to a second-level engineer. So that ultimately, in the end, what happens, the customer experience is better. You didn't have to talk to a level 1 guy for 3 hours before reaching a high-level engineer to actually solve the problem he has.
So Cris, let's finish up with this. How about a final thought from you? You've been sitting in the control room, watching all the other guests. You've commented on all of these 5 or 4 customer service survival tips. Feel free to comment on Be Social if you want. It's not that you don't live on social channels like everybody else. But what's a couple of things you've learned or that's been reinforced to you in this show that you could talk to our audience about when in a B2B environment that's important for takeaways when it comes to customer service survival tips?
Yeah, I've heard quite a few things that I felt good about after hearing, because a lot of things that Yaskawa is practicing daily. They talked about even in the social aspect, us being primarily B2B, we're not in the social environment. We don't basically make those part of our KPIs. I totally understand how it is. I think as a newer generation starts entering those B2B environments, social then become somehow evolve into these environments. But today I don't think it's actually too much of a plays a big role for us, especially. But I think I like the knowledge management and process management that I've heard these people talk about, these fine guests here, and I also talked about the consistency across all the other channels. These are all things Yaskawa does, and I think we're pretty good at it. I do see a shift in the future with especially with people wanting to self-serve. I think that's even more important in the future. And I've seen, we did a lot of research and met with some companies, try to see how did it help you. And what I found, it was pretty shocking that primarily even in B2B environments where customers would, primarily their organization was supporting by telephone 70% of the time, 30% of the time were these other channels, you know, being email or chat and such. And over time, by providing consistent and excellent self-service, you know, teaching them how to fish, it actually shifted. They're doing 70% of online support and email support and only 30% phone calls. Mm-hmm. So that actually plays in and actually is realized in the field, in the market.
Great having Cris on the show today, Kai.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cris. Great insights from Yaskawa from a practitioner's perspective to complement the other guests here. Thank you very much, Cris, for having you.
Thank you.
Well, personally, I'm not going to rank our guests because they were all great, but I'd just like to thank Cris for coming in, for being someone closer to my height with all these tall people that have been on the show today, okay? So it's been a little better having Cris on the show. Hang right there for 1 second, Cris. Let me remind you that you are watching The Customer Edge. The Customer Edge is a live monthly webcast that is a part of a larger community, and this community is at custedge.com. It is a conversation hub and community for providing great customer experience in sales, marketing, and customer service. It is a place where you can, and we encourage you to, explore insights, information, and ideas from experts around the globe, and to embrace the challenge of engaging customers in this new age. All right, Kai, in just a minute or so to wrap this up, there's so many things to take away from this. Let me throw you a few things that you can comment to end this show. We focused on 5 clever customer service survival tips. We had guests that covered the whole spectrum. John Carroll, the CEO of the Service Council. Bill Ziska, director at Deloitte Digital. Cris Franco from Yaskawa, who's just here, and Brad Blake from Hill Holloway. Couple of takeaways. What Cris just said there, experience and expectations, having those two meet. That's a key point that kept coming up in our show, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is the core of everything we have to do as a customer service organization, because again, if you think about it, every single customer service interaction has an impact on the brand perception of the company. And we all know it, that there are more choices out there than ever before, and if and when a customer service experience is unpleasant, then before you know it, your customers go to your competitor. And you don't want that to happen, because at the end of the day, we all know that keeping an existing customer loyal just costs a fraction of acquiring new customers. And you want to keep your customers loyal so that you can keep your costs down.
And again, before we show our 5 clever tips one more time to wrap up the show, something else that kept coming up throughout the show, customer service is no longer a line of business. That's one thing that got reinforced to me, right? Let's talk about that. What does that mean if I'm a customer service professional? Is that a comforting thought for me?
Well, it's a challenging thought maybe at times, but what it absolutely means is that you must not see yourself as just the person picking up the phone and handling a service complaint, but you are representing the company across the entire buyer's journey, across sales, across service, across marketing, across commerce, and across the execution and logistics. It all comes down to customer service. One unpleasant service experience can ruin the efforts of all your salespeople under the sun and all the marketing dollars that you're spending. So customer service is absolutely key across the entire organization and has to be meeting the expectations of the clients.
All right, so again, here are our 5 clever customer service survival tips that we've been talking about on this show on the way out. Be consistent across channels. Reduce the effort for everyone. Always be proactive, be social, and teach them to fish. We thank you for being a part of this episode of The Customer Edge. For Kai Petzelt, I'm Butch Stearns. We'll see you next time on The Customer Edge.